In this video, I will be reviewing the Xbox Series S after now owning and using the console for quite a few months. If you're new here on the Anthony Allen YouTube channel, don't forget to smash that subscribe button and give me a thumbs up. I'm going to be providing you with my perspective on the Xbox Series S, and there will be more videos where this one came from. Now, the first thing that I want to talk about in terms of the Xbox Series S is one of the most obvious appeals of the console, and that of course is the price. At this current moment in time in 2021, the Xbox Series S costs around about $250 to $300 or pounds, and that price point is absolutely brilliant for somebody who's upgrading from previous generation consoles, as it's on the cheaper side compared to, for example, the PS5 or the Xbox Series X. The price point is brilliant, and not only that, you can also pay monthly. So there are pay monthly options, and here in the UK, for example, we have various merchants that offer payment through a service called Klarna, and there are other services that you can make these payments through. And although this may vary depending on your location, do not fret, because these are some of these services that I teach here as well on the Anthony Allen YouTube channel. You can find some of those services in my online money playlist, where I teach you how to use these services, where you can pay in monthly installments and so on. And these are some of the services that are being used when you are being offered the chance to pay for your Xbox upgrade in monthly installments. Microsoft and the people at Xbox have really thought about you, the gamer, in considering you when you want to upgrade from your previous generation games console. And that definitely does put the Xbox Series S up there in terms of the gaming community, because you now have the chance to upgrade without having to really break the bank. So now that we've covered the price and we've reviewed the price, and it's definitely one of the high points of the console, let's talk about those gorgeous visuals and that frame rate. These are the two things that new gamers think about in terms of their gaming when they're buying a new games console. You want to know that you have those gorgeous visuals and that brand new all-important frame rate. Frame rate has become an industry sort of attribute that all gamers are looking at in terms of their next generation gaming, and Xbox Series S really does hold its own. Not only does it have that standard 60 frames per second on many of the games, but you also have that FPS boost for those games of previous generation games consoles that are now available and optimized for the Xbox Series S. FPS boost is amazing because it offers a boost to the frame rate of games that previously did not support the 60 frames per second frame rate. For example, Skyrim is one of those games that offers FPS boost. It was not originally intended to be created for a next generation games console such as the Xbox Series X and S, but with FPS boost and Microsoft technology, Xbox are able to bring the Bethesda game Skyrim into the next generation with a higher frame rate. You will have that crispy frame rate that will deliver more detail to your gaming. Now, for those gamers who haven't yet played on a next generation games console like the Xbox Series S, I'm going to tell you now, once you have played a next generation game with that crispy frame rate, and then you go back to a game that supports 30 FPS or 24 FPS or something lower than 60, you will notice the difference. I tried it. I'm not going to call out any game studios or games that I've played because that would be unfair, but when you do go backwards, you definitely notice the difference. It makes you feel like you're definitely playing a previous generation game when the frame rate is lower, because you've been playing seamlessly with 60 frame rate or higher, and when you go backwards, oh boy, you definitely feel it. So the Xbox Series S, for the price range and going up to that higher frame per second, trust me, is definitely worth the bang for the buck. I've also shown you how to enable FPS boost on your Xbox Series S games and Xbox Series X games, and you can see that video in the cards up above. And of course, you have those gorgeous visuals and ray tracing that adds another dimension to your gaming visuals. When you're playing an optimized Xbox Series S game and you have ray tracing enabled in a scene, it is gorgeous. Things glow and you can see it on screen. Like, it's really hard to explain, but I'll give you some visual representations. Now, for example, Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Ori glows, and when Ori touches a surface, you can really see that light bouncing off surfaces. There are other games as well which use ray tracing effectively, but this is a good example, for example, Ori, because it has a lot of light bouncing within a scene and onto and off the textures. The water within games is completely different. So, for example, when you're playing games like Fortnite, there's water within Fortnite, and there's also things like Slurpy Swamp and so forth. When you go into Slurpy Swamp and you see that water ripple, compared to when you go back to a previous generation game, the difference is there. You can almost feel it, and the immersion is completely different. So when you go backwards to a previous generation games console, for those games, you will be like, am I in the water? Like, what's happening? Like, the textures feel completely different, and it definitely makes a difference in immersion, because you get used to the high quality frame rate and you get used to the high quality textures and ray tracing. You will notice the difference when you go backwards. But as you're playing, because you're so immersed, and because I've been so immersed in these games, you don't actually, it's like a seamless experience. It's like you're walking through a scene and you're experiencing textures and visuals, and it's more, realistic in some terms of some games. And when you go backwards, it's like, oh, okay, now I definitely 100% notice the difference between a next generation game and a previous generation game in terms of the textures and visuals and ray tracing. Let's move on to the games library. So the game library is definitely been a focal point in the gaming community in terms of the Xbox Series X and S. Now, this review is for the Xbox Series S, but of course the games library is exactly the same, and that's one of the perks as well of purchasing the Xbox Series S. If you're strapped for cash, you will still be getting those Xbox Series X games, just available on your Xbox Series S and optimized for your console. Now, those hardcore gamers will most likely have a 4K screen. Now, for the majority of the gaming community, most of the gaming community will not yet have a 4K screen. And although 4K screens and TVs are being made available, this is something that not everybody can yet afford. So Xbox and Microsoft had considered this, and that is why the Xbox Series S have been made with the ability to boost your gaming up to 4K. This is for when you get that upgrade, you have your Xbox Series S, maybe not yet upgraded to an Xbox Series X, and you want that 4K gaming, maybe in between an upgrade or maybe with your Xbox Series S, which makes it possible for somebody who's now able to afford a 4K TV after a period of time that has an Xbox Series S because they wanted to upgrade, to now have 4K gaming. And that's the message that Xbox and Microsoft are putting out there. They want this next generation to be available to more gamers, and that's what the Xbox Series S is, in terms of not just your visuals, not just your FPS boost and your frame rate, but also with the storage. And that moves on to our next point on what we're talking about next, and that is the storage. Now, there are those gamers that want so many games on their console, they don't want to be compromised on space, and I completely understand that, because you have a lot of games that you would like to play. Games seem to be getting bigger in gig size, and I understand that you want to play more games on your gaming console and have them available ready to play. Maybe you have a family that plays multiple games and you want a lot of games on your games console, and that is why many of you have chose to purchase the Xbox Series X and not the Xbox Series S. But there is an expansion pack available. I've also spoken about this on my YouTube channel. There is an expansion card, a recommended expansion card, and the expansion card is definitely a good asset that you can purchase for your Xbox Series S console. Much like the 4K screen and being able to bump up your visuals to 4K, this is exactly the same. When you're ready to have more storage for your Xbox Series S, you can use that expansion card. Of course, when you're in the Xbox ecosystem and you're downloading games to your profile, that game will be available in your library. So once you have downloaded a game, whether it's from Xbox Game Pass or it's something that you've purchased, that is still available for you to re-download to your games console. It's not completely gone. So when you delete a game from your Xbox Series S, it's not actually 100% deleted, it's still there in your full library that you can re-download again. If it's a Xbox Game Pass game, you can just re-download that game from Xbox Game Pass from your library, and you won't have to go into Xbox Game Pass again to use it. As long as your subscription is still active and that game is still available on Xbox Game Pass, you can just re-download that game to your Xbox Series S. So if you're compromised for space because you want to download something like Halo Infinite, or you want to download Warzone and you're compromised on space and you don't yet have your expansion card, you can just delete a game and then download what you need. And of course, when you're really compromised on storage because you have those high-end games that actually use quite a lot of space, this is when you can purchase an expansion card. For example, I have the 1TB and I've taught you how to use that. Now let's move on to one of the final points that I'd like to mention before we give a rating on the Xbox Series S, and I give you my conclusion thoughts on the console. Let's talk about that design. So the design again has really been thought about in terms of gamers that are new to gaming and those that don't want a huge console taking up a space in their room, maybe because they don't have a gaming setup or it's not something they're used to in their living room or for the family. Now the Xbox Series S is definitely small, so it won't take up too much room. You can have it in a TV stand, you can have it on top of a TV stand, you can have it tucked away. It's so small that it won't take up too much space in the living room if it's something that you're using with the family television. It's something that can be tucked away, and it can also be put in a landscape position, so you don't have to have it portrait, you can have it in a landscape position. Don't cover it up. I advise that you do not cover up your console because it will overheat. Make sure it's got a little bit of airflow and you're absolutely fine. It's so small and light that when I did my unboxing of the Xbox Series S, I compared it to household items that you can find in your home so that you can understand how small the Xbox Series S is and you have a better understanding of its size. You can find that video in the cards up above. So now that we've spoken about the Xbox Series S, let's get into my overall conclusion on what I think about the console at this current moment in time. At this current moment in time, for the regular gamer, the average gamer, the Xbox Series S is definitely one of a kind, brilliant upgrade for you to make today. If you're strapped for cash, you have that price point and you can pay in monthly installments. If you want to have that frame rate and those gorgeous visuals, you can have them. And if you don't have a 4K TV yet, don't worry, if you get one, you can bump up the gaming footage to a 4K imagery, and you have that FPS boost on those previous generation games. You have Game Pass, so you have many games available, and you can also re-download games that you have available on your Xbox game profile. And there's more games to come. After E3 2021, we found out that there are more games to come to the Xbox Series consoles. Not only that, if you're strapped for storage, maybe because you've downloaded Halo Infinite, a really big game, it might be big, I'm not sure yet, but let's give Warzone for example. Maybe you've downloaded Warzone and you want more games, maybe because you game with the family or because you genuinely want more games on your console, you can purchase an expansion card to give you more storage. And in terms of the size, it's fairly small, can be tucked away in the living room somewhere, doesn't need to take up too much room. It's definitely something that doesn't take up too much room and won't be an eyesore on your TV stand. And it is for those reasons that I give the Xbox Series S a 4 out of 5 stars. The Xbox Series S is a brilliant console for a new gamer and for the majority of the gaming community. Yes, diehards want more, and I understand that, and I completely understand those professional gamers and those that work in the gaming industry that will definitely 100% need the Xbox Series X, and there are also those gamers who will want the Xbox Series X. And I completely understand that, but I have to give my props to the Xbox Series S for the majority of the gaming community and bringing more people over to Xbox. It's brilliant. I do recommend it, and there is a link to the Xbox Series S in the description. Hopefully I've provided you with more context, and I've also been giving you some imagery on screen so you can see the quality. If you would like a part 2 to this video, then let me know in the comment section down below and I can give you even more perspective on the Xbox Series S. Maybe later on down the line when there's more games available, you want me to make another review on the Xbox Series S, maybe you want me to review a game. These are things that I can do here on the Anthony Allen YouTube channel. But with that said, here's some content on screen. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video right here on the Anthony Allen YouTube channel. Thank you for watching this review of the Xbox Series S.